Hello. I want to welcome everyone this evening. My name is Kate Leiden. I'm the Director of Exhibitions here, and Kate Fishbein is also in our department. And we are thrilled that everyone has come out this evening in the midst of this snowstorm of 2010. And we also want to say a special hello to some online guests that are with us this evening. This is our first time we're going to be streaming the lecture live. So to those folks that are online, welcome. And if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask questions during the course of the talk, and then we'll engage the questions at the end of Craig's talk. So I am very, very pleased this evening to introduce Craig Nutt. Craig is an internationally recognized furniture maker and was most recently the juror for our Elizabeth R. Raphael Founders Prize for Wood. He is here this evening in connection with that, but also in connection with his exhibition, Cornography, that touches on aspects of growing organic food production, and we're very excited. I think it's going to be a very interesting talk. So without further ado, Craig.
Okay, this may be another first here because of the web streaming. This may be the first gallery talk in the history of the world that started on time. Well, as Kate said, I've been here for the week since Tuesday. I had some high-level talks to do in Punxsutawney, and then on to Indiana University to spend some time there in the classroom. So it's been an interesting week so far. So let's see if I can get this thing to work right. There we go. If I don't have to go back, it's only time. I grew up in a small farming community in Iowa, and lived there until I was about 10. This is kind of this is the skyline of my town. This grain elevator is kind of the skyscraper in town, and you can see it driving into town about 40 miles before you get there. And that's kind of typical of the landscape in that part of town. So I didn't actually grow up on a town, but on a farm, but I grew up in a farming community. And I was up there this summer and driving around and caught some pictures. And really the towns around there, this is one of the bigger towns, and the other towns around there have grain elevators also as they're in their downtowns. These are towns that my mother grew up in and my grandfather grew up in. So some things haven't really changed all that much, but I'll talk a little bit, try to weave a little bit into the talk about how things have changed and how it relates to my work. And what I want to do in the talk, I saw Howard Finster, the American folk artist, on the Johnny Carson show years ago, and he was talking about, Johnny was asking him how he came to build his Paradise Garden, which is this kind of amazing sculptural construction made out of welded bicycle parts, tools cast in concrete, costume jewelry, just all kinds of junk put together in a pretty amazing construction. And he said, well, now Johnny, it's like if I had this itchy spot on my head and I was to ask you to scratch it, you wouldn't know where to put your finger. But if I was to scratch it, I'd put it right there, right on it. It's kind of like that. I thought that has to be about the best description of the creative impulse I've ever heard. And a little while later, I heard Roy Blunt Jr. speak, the Southern humorist, and he said the thing that people always ask him is, where do your ideas come from? It's kind of just a variation on that same question. And he said, well, it's really like asking exactly what's in that sausage. There's a really long list of ingredients, and maybe by the time you hear them all, you wish you hadn't asked in the first place. So at the risk of telling you all the ingredients in the sausage, we'll touch on some of them, and I'll tell you a little bit about what has gone into my work and how it kind of weaves together with agriculture. I started out working in an antique shop when I got out of college. At that time I was painting and doing sculpture and free improvised music. And it was really my first exposure to furniture at all, really, in any serious way. And in the process of taking pieces of furniture apart, I kind of got reacquainted, or I guess I grew up with a generation of people who were always talking about craftsmanship and trying to instill that value, but I think it didn't necessarily rub off as much as they hoped, because I was a child of the 50s and at a time when the consumer culture was built around planned obsolescence. Of course, we're in the middle of just as raging a consumer culture as ever. I don't know that there's that much on the market that is made to last. I don't think anybody's taking their iPods in to be repaired. Just chuck that and get another one. So taking these old pieces of furniture apart and seeing how they were made, and then the clientele of the antique shop, that piece of furniture had belonged to their grandfather and father, and there's a little sticker underneath it for which child got the piece when they died. So it was just a way of looking at things that I was not that familiar with, and things passing down through generations. And actually, like how much was manufactured in the 50s and 60s that was capable of being passed down through generations. Not much. So to me, it's like taking these pieces of furniture apart and seeing the care that went into hand-making dovetails and things. It was like a message in the bottle to me about that kind of transmitted the ethic of craftsmanship. And I think it spoke to me very powerfully. So that was one of the things. And then I got fascinated with the techniques, like trying to solve the puzzle of how were those dovetails cut. There really wasn't much literature out there that had that information at that time. And so I just look at saw marks and scribing marks, and well, maybe there are about 3 ways you could cut a dovetail, and I try it each way, and a couple of them worked. And so that became fascinating, and just the whole variety of furniture forms, and wondering how those could be produced without the sophisticated machinery that we had, which I realized they could be produced because they didn't have the sophisticated machinery, because people had hand skills and could just pick up a tool and just do it. So I started out making pieces that were period style pieces. This is a hunt board that is kind of typical of styles through Georgia and central Alabama in the 1820s, 1830s. And made Windsor chairs. This is a pie crust table, very traditional pie crust table. So made this kind of stuff. But at the same time, the kinds of artwork I was interested in were things like Duchamp. Duchamp, Kurt Schwitters, and things like that. So Dada work. And I was doing these weird performances of free improvised music. So there was a real disconnect. I was kind of even operating under different names, hoping the clientele for my reproduction furniture wouldn't find out about the other me, because it just didn't exactly fit. So we did stage shows. The newspaper clipping is from a University of Alabama homecoming parade, the Marching Vegetable Band. That was like 1974, I think. And this is an image of a CD reissue of our first album that we put out, Riddell and his Pataphysical Review, which was a combination of a big band. We had a big band. It was like a typical variety show at the time, a stand-up comic, MC, a big band, and then a bunch of other acts. It was all the same people, but we had did a piece called Concerto for Active Frogs that later became a fairly important contemporary composition for the, it's actually the first release of Anne LeBaron, who is a well-known composer. And we did, as far as I know, the first all-appliance orchestra. So it was just totally, totally not craft, absolutely unconcerned with craft at all. We pick up instruments with no plan whatsoever, even instruments that people didn't exactly know how to play, and start playing. So total contrast to the more regulated, precise process of making furniture. But at some point, I think it was when, at some point I realized that I had kind of gotten comfortable enough with the technique that I could start designing my own work. And I also kind of felt that the period style furniture for me was a creative dead end. And I think that kind of happened as I became more invested in furniture making as a creative pursuit. And when I started out, it was all separate. You know, I make furniture to make a living and make my art this other way. And I started thinking, well, maybe furniture could be art as well. And so I started designing pieces, playing around with triangular forms. When I was about 10, my family moved to Huntsville, Alabama, in 1960, so that was kind of at the height of the space program. There's static testing, Saturn rocket boosters all the time. So I picked up aerospace imagery into my work from growing up in the Rocket City. So this is kind of a space-age shaker candle stand. And then as a kid, I was always interested in dinosaurs. And, you know, I'm missing, some of my slides are not all showing here. There was supposed to be a slide there to come in with that dinosaur shot of a King Tut throne from King Tut's tomb. And those two things, the Treasures of Tutankhamun was an epiphany for me. And it would really help if I could get back to that image. I'm not sure if it'll only go forward. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, there's another image it's just showing half of the images. Sorry. Yeah, it's only showing half of it.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Okay. I don't know what we'll do. We'll just move on, and I'll try to tell you what isn't shown on here. Anyway, this tomb from King Tut's, this throne from King Tut's tomb was just so different from the Western style furniture that I've been looking at. The legs looked like it had front legs and back legs instead of legs that all point out to the corners, the same leg, and it looked like it could walk across the room. And so that naturalistic pose really struck me. And then the construction of the piece, the legs kind of pushed up through the chair top. There were no aprons, and one of the typical construction I'd been looking at were 4 legs joined by 4 aprons. And this just didn't have any of that baggage of those structural members. It just made the piece really clean and really read in a much stronger way. And what I wanted to do was to kind of work with kind of the contemporary understanding of dinosaurs. I kind of speculate that the Chinese dragon claw, they've been digging up those big bones in China probably for thousands of years, and surely that must have influenced the notion of dragons. But it's only been very recently that we have a pretty good understanding of what the animals actually look like and the way they move. And so I thought it was a really kind of classical idea to create this desk that was, instead of a ball and claw foot like the dragon claw, it was actually a dinosaur. I put it up on this...
And a tortoise.
On a tortoise shell, and I thought that's contemporaneous with the dinosaurs. I needed to raise it up to give the claws some space at the floor, and I was really pleased with myself coming up with that. I thought, oh, this is very original. And then I saw a table in the Treasure Houses of Great Britain show. It was like a, I don't know, 17th or 18th century English piece of furniture, and it's standing on turtle shells, and it's in Hindu mythology, the turtle represents the earth. And, I don't know, I wonder if I could make a copyright infringement suit. I guess there's really nothing that's all that original, no matter how original you think it is. So I've done a lot of boxes, and I think of actually the segue here is the foot. I've done a lot of boxes, and I think of a box as something you can put an idea in. And I mean, here it's kind of a dopey idea, a shoe box. It's just a visual fun. But actually, boy, that looks huge. This is actually a size 11, so not nearly as large as it looks there. And there's a compartment inside, a drawer in the toe. This one's called, I've actually done more women's shoes because my wife would wear high heels and then the next day complain about how much her feet hurt. And I just give yourself some sensible shoes. But I had to admit that she looks good in high heels, and I feel guilty about that too. So it kind of helped me work through some issues on that, and also kind of understand this thing with shoes that women have. I think it's probably worth the sacrifice of letting your feet hurt. I don't know. I've spent some time in shoe stores watching women shop for shoes, and it's not at all the same as the way men shop. I go get a shoe box out of the rack and go sit down and take my shoes off and put the new shoe on and lace it up. And I'm watching women walk around the store. They knock them off the top shelf and put their shoe off and slip their foot in it and look okay, and they knock this one off. Okay, it's not at all the way I buy shoes, but I think it's really an aesthetic, a different aesthetic. So this one's called One Small Step for Mankind. When you pick it up from the box, the toenails flash. And there's one of the shoe boxes in the case over here, one called Marilyn Likes to Wear Unusual Socks. Maria's New Tattoo. I did a show in Nashville with Gaza Bowen, who was trained as a shoemaker, and she made shoes. I wish I could have done her for work. When I saw it, I said, I would give anything to make these pieces. They were stitched up out of dish rags, like colored dish rags, with frills on the toes made from copper scouring pads, and the heels were stacked cellulose sponges. And the review of the show, the reviewer said, Gaza Bowen's shoes talk about women being forced into untenable footwear, whereas Nutt shoes idolize and objectify women. That's it. That was exactly what I was trying to get at, is that's what these shoes are.
Well, you did put it on a pedestal.
Yeah, I did put it on a pedestal. So this one, Maria's New Tattoo, my shop assistant, Maria, went out and got a carrot tattooed on her ankle one day, and I actually hadn't cared much for tattoos until then. And this one has LEDs that flash up the side of the shoe. Electronics are concealed underneath the sole of the shoe. This is now this is going to be a problem if this doesn't work out. This is a coffin for the world. It's called Reliquary. Just in one shot there. Anyway, It's a bronze globe with kind of the stuff of civilization melted together. And really, it took me about 3 years to get the bronze casting just right. And so I pretty well worked through all my demons about nuclear war while trying to figure out how to get this piece done. What I wanted to do was scale down just the whole idea of nuclear conflict to the scale of like when you see someone you care about laying in a coffin. Because everything seemed so abstract when politicians would talk about nuclear war. It's like, oh well, we're protected because we have mutually assured destruction. Well, I didn't really find that all that comforting, and so I kind of worked through that. It was one of those pieces. I still own this piece. I really didn't think I would ever sell it because I don't know who's going to put this in their home, or I can't quite see it in a corporate collection, that's supposed to make people feel good about the corporation. So, but it has gotten shown a lot. I used to stop at every fireworks stand. There's something about fireworks stands that, like this thing, it's like covers practically a city block, but there's like, the building is like a little trailer back there. You can kind of climb through this billboard into a little trailer. And the rockets going off and neon and the graphics, they promise so much but deliver so little. I thought there was something just really American. You always have to drive across state lines and buy it and smuggle it back home so you can set it off illegally. So what's that got to do with King Tut's cartouche box? This is another piece from Tut's throne. I love the way his cartouche was depicted in 3D on the top, and also the way the box is shaped gave me the idea for a nuclear medicine chest. Can't open that up. Inside it has drawers that pull out for your iodine capsules or rollates. It has a music box movement, and when you wind it up, missiles go over the horizon while these raindrops keep falling on my head with one note out of tune. So this is another, actually the music box, the wind-up music box movement will work even with no electricity or solid-state devices. So if you had a nuclear exchange, you'd still have an operating home entertainment center. This is a donut teapot. When you open it up, it has compartments inside for tea bags. And so I was asked to do a wooden teapot for a teapot show, and it just didn't make any sense to make a wooden teapot. I felt it needed to be a functional piece. And so the idea of a tea caddy, it's kind of junk food, and tea bags are kind of the junk food of tea. So it kind of made sense. And I think that's one of the things in my work that when I make a piece that's supposed to be functional, I like it to really be functional, like a chair. You should really be able to sit in it. It should be pretty comfortable. So this is out in the garden of my property. When I started gardening about the time I started making furniture. And initially it was really to, I think when I started out I was making $1.50 an hour. So it was a good survival strategy to be able to grow food, put on the table. We've got a freezer and put food away. And then we actually started from the beginning gardening organically. And kind of got much better produce than we could buy. It kind of became an aesthetic thing as well as just a survival tactic. But what I didn't really expect from gardening was it also became very much about communications. At the time living in West Alabama in the 70s, and I had hair down to my shoulders, and most of the people were, you know, people would try to run you down with their cars or drag you into barber shops and get your hair cut. You know, you felt like you're alienated from a lot of the population. That all changed when I started growing the garden, because I suddenly had something in common with all of those people out in the country who I didn't know how to begin a conversation with. And, you know, we could talk about the weather, we could talk about Punxsutawney Phil's prediction and whether they thought that was right. In Alabama, I always started planting my garden on Groundhog Day. I could plant snow peas on Groundhog Day. You know, and then, you talk to someone and you say, well, I have crows in the garden. The crows are eating all my watermelons. What do you do about that? And it's like, well, you know, crows can only count to 2, so you need to get 3 people together and get a gun and go down into the garden, and the crows will count 1, 2, and so you go down there, and then you get 2 people to leave, and they'll count 1, 2, and they'll think everybody's gone, and you can just sit there and shoot them all day long. So I've got a million of those things, and it's just, you know, it was just a great way to communicate. And so when I started doing vegetable pieces like this amazing 3-foot-long flying wonder bean, you know, people I take something like this to market up north, and people would say, this is pretty weird. You know, what do people down in Alabama think about that? People in Alabama all grow gardens. You know, they relate to that. And you know, where maybe the work that I was doing, like that free improvised music, was deliberately obscure, and it didn't really give people much of a starting place to grab onto it. I found that this kind of imagery everybody related to in some way, and I think what happened over time as I made more and more of these pieces is that I found I could layer other things, other ideas onto it. You know, it may have just been the use of the color or a kind of dopey title like a unidentified flying onion, or it could be something political, but it, you know, the vegetables kind of became developed into a vocabulary. And I think that just relates to that that experience of gardening. Of course, everybody eats, and you know, eating has this, you know, really serious aesthetic dimension to it. So you know, you can relate to just the aesthetics of the piece through your own personal experience. It's a cargo melon. This is a Grinling Gibbons Flying English Pea. I was like at the county fairs, and you know, when you go to the Industry on Parade exhibit, and they have valves that are cut in half, and you can like see inside and outside, or the visible man and visible woman things from school. I've always loved that kind of thing where you can see inside and outside at the same time. And when you go to the farmer's market, you put a little window out of the corn so you can see that there are actually kernels in there. I just love that. So this is a sleek leek. And somehow, I think that, at least in my own mind, this may be diluted, but in my own mind, it seemed to make sense to put propellers on the furniture, on the flying vegetables, and things like shovels, mechanical things, because the vegetables are kind of at once a product of nature, but they're also a product of industry. And you know, just the way they're manipulated genetically and crossbred, and I'm very inspired by seed catalogs, and they always promise, you know, bigger and better vegetables. And when you get the seed catalogs in the new fashion colors, like you used to not be able to get a red pepper unless you grew it yourself and let it ripen in the garden. But when people figured out that you could get $4 a pound for a red pepper, suddenly the market's full of red peppers. That's a Georgia Jet. And I started seeing, I put this turkey baster under it, and I started seeing similarities between, like this and this would be a vase form on a pedestal of a Queen Anne pedestal tape. So I put kind of Queen Anne looking feet under it, serpentine feet. Flyer be Frenched. Now, I kind of grew up handing tools, working underneath these windmills that used to be on every farm, and handing tools down to my grandfather, who was a plumber, and most of them had been converted to electric pumps at that time, but you know, they were still capable of pumping water to the farm. This one is in a museum in my hometown. It was the only one I saw in Iowa. Although I did drive through an actual wind farm out in the cornfields. It's probably absolutely the perfect place to build wind farms. So that's kind of the horizon where I grew up on the edge. This is on the edge of my hometown. Just corn as far as you can see, either corn or soybeans. And I always thought it was really boring when I was a kid, but it's kind of starkly beautiful. There's a lot of sky. I could kind of see that flying through there. And you know, one thing that occurred to me when I was making these pieces maybe 25 years ago was that the way farming is done on this scale is really a lot like a military operation. And I didn't really realize until fairly recently just how related farming is to the military. You know, that the actual industry for creating fertilizer and pesticides is a direct spin-off from munitions industry and chemical warfare industry. So, you know, somehow driving through there last summer, kind of this beautiful landscape had a little bit of a sinister tinge to it. And one thing that had happened since I was there last was there were like I mean, there's still the remnants of family farms, but people who live there are kind of like me. They have a garden out back, and then they drive to a job. But there are no animals on the farms, except in hog containment facilities. You know, and you don't see any hogs. You just see these massive buildings with hoppers on the side of it. But you can tell by the smell that it's hogs. What they used to call the smell of money. You know, you just, I think driving around, and you see in just every square inch of the state of Iowa is under cultivation. Even the sides of the roads were being hayed off. These were some silos that I know I'd seen growing up and ended up in some of the flying vegetable pieces. But also, like driving by there, then you kind of see the artillery out in front, getting ready to lay the chemicals down. So in 1988, I'd probably made about 50 of these flying vegetables, and during the presidential election, I mean, it's at the Wayback Machine. Vice President Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, was running for president, and on one of those sound bites, I woke up, he was on NPR, and he said, "I will never use food as a weapon." And it's like, finally, someone has said something I can use. So I did a series of vegetable bombs. He was, I think he was making a dig at Jimmy Carter because Carter had embargoed grain shipments to the Soviet Union. But I thought, this is really a funny idea, food as a weapon. So I did the nuke cube, tactical tuber, I took these to Baltimore. I was doing the national craft fairs at the time. I took them to the Baltimore Winter Market. And when I got home, I was going through my guest book and transcribing addresses of people who had signed in. And one person had signed in and said, I'm a speechwriter for George Bush. I wrote the line, I will never use food as a weapon. Glad to see you using it. So I thought, that sounded like an invitation to me. And I thought, so I wrote him a letter and I said, I'm new as an arms contractor. And I wondered if you could help me, put me in touch with someone who can help me sell this to the Pentagon. As Mr. Bush's campaign promise notwithstanding, America cannot afford to be caught unprepared in the event of an international food fight. And, you know, I've never heard back from him. You know, I just pick up the phone and it would click, click, click. But, you know, I had this image. Maybe I got a little carried away with it. Yeah, but I had this image. Do you know that the picture of Elvis and Nixon in the Oval Office when Elvis went to in his cape and with a Luger to trade to President Nixon for the narcotics badge, and they're standing there shaking hands with the flags on the side. I kind of thought that would be nice, and President Bush is handing me the pen that he's just signed the big multi-billion-dollar arms contract, and it just didn't work out. But I can tell you what, they stole the idea. I mean, they just took it. Just fast forward to the second President Bush, to the war after the initial bombing of Afghanistan, and I woke up to this news on public radio that we were dropping food on people in Afghanistan, and they were dropping canned food on people, and it was actually killing people. And you know, so they take the idea without any understanding of what's behind it, and just completely mess it up. So, fast forward a little bit more, and I get an email from a colonel in the Air Force who is doing a course at the Pentagon on using food as a terrorist weapon, and he wanted to know if he could use images of these pieces in his presentation. And I said, yeah, whatever, go ahead. just give me credit and let me send you some decent pictures. So having these big flying vegetables around the studio, they started looking like furniture parts. This is a flying cayenne, and I thought, oh, that would make a really nice table leg. So I did some pepper tables and started doing inlay in the tops to bring some of the color up into the top. This is one with fireworks, pepper table with fireworks, and get a little of the motion from the legs up into the tabletop. And then more, as I played with my food even more, I realized that some of these forms were looking like the historical furniture that I had started out with. And I could play around with those forms and have a little fun at the expense of the old cabinet makers, but also be very respectful to the tradition of furniture making. So, you know, this is, Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And I do that fairly often when I'm doing, I'll do multiples, and so I'll do one in natural vegetables. Well, of course, this is kind of the European style asparagus, and in bleached curly maple. Not as nutritious, but still very beautiful. So I'll do variations on that theme. The okra tripod table, I think it's a definitive piece of Southern furniture. And what I like about this has a really, you know, it's almost like a classical reeded column, just a really natural depiction of an okra pod. I took that up north, and people say, "Oh, I hate that table. I would never put that in my home." I had boiled okra once, and it was really gross. And I said, well, you just need to roll it in cornmeal and fry it, and you'll definitely want to buy the table. And so there's my Midwestern table, a corn table. And this one's, the slide's not going to be in there, but it's a traditional tilt-top table. This is, I had 3 slides. This is one in the show, a chalice for a corn palace. I'm just going to move through this because without the other slides, it's not going to work. These are some onions that I left to bloom in my garden. And if you can remember the Windsor chair from earlier in the presentation, these started looking like the bulbous stretchers underneath the Windsor chair. And so I did a series of tables that have that kind of Windsor-style construction, onion blossom tables. And the blossoms on 2 of them have started to open up. So if you're find yourself laying on the living room floor one morning, you have something nice to look at before you head off to get some aspirin. So tomatoes, there had to be a tomato table. And what I was playing with here too was trying to get something close to the leafage on the tomato, but also reference traditional carving that you might see on an 18th century piece of furniture, the typical acanthus leaf carving. Mm-hmm. And then also a little bit of the kind of form of a woman's foot in a high heel shoe. Yeah. So these are celery chairs with carrots, peppers, and snow pea. And what I was doing here is making a set of chairs with using the same components of exchanging carrots and peppers, and then different kind of vegetable skin seeds. This is the part that really makes the piece for me, is where at the top of the celery where it splits off, and then the leaves of the snow pea. This is a radish salad bowl that's about 5 feet high, and let's see, the other image of this is on the same slide, so I guess it's not going to show either. It splits here in the middle, but this top flips over and makes a second salad bowl. It's bleached maple inside the bowl, so it's like it looks like the sliced through radish, and then the leaves come off in our salad servers. That bothered me for a while that I only had 3 leaves and you have 2 hands. That I just, that's what I needed to do. Three servers, 1 for each hand. And this is a radish table. This took me a few years to figure out how to do this, to make this table stand on the leaves without collapsing. And what I really, my wife and I go to see ballroom dancing competitions, and I love the foxtrot competitions. With the women wear these really flouncy gowns that almost touch the floor, and the kind of frilly gowns. And I wanted to get that feel and motion to the leaves that you see in those ballroom dancing gowns. And so that's what I was really trying to get with these leaves. The top, let's see, we have another image. I think the other image is overlaid on here, so it's not going to show. You see those lines there? It's like a drop leaf table, but the leaves drop up, so you can get inside this piece and put something in it. And that's why really that's not a very useful space, and it was a lot of trouble to go to access that space, but it kind of gets at what one of the things that I really like about working with furniture is that furniture has kind of a theatrical aspect to it because it has moving parts, doors where you can get into an interior space, and that can be different. Like this piece, you know, if you have this little piece of stage action you can do. I don't know what you would put in there, but I could imagine putting something in there that when you say, hey, look at this, and pop those leaves up, and people say, oh my God, close it. You know, so you could, where basically working with sculpture, you know, it's this, to me anyway, it's the same process and a lot of the same kind of design things. Like instead of like making a chair and worrying about whether it's comfortable or whether it'll collapse under your weight on a piece of sculpture, that maybe is this thing going to stay mounted to the ceiling of this public space and not fall down and crush the life out of somebody. But you know, so you have all these kind of functional concerns, or how's this thing going to look as you walk up the concourse? But it doesn't have that same kind of theatrical aspect of being able to open it up and have different things inside and relate to it in that personal way. So this is a carrot cabinet. It's called 9-Carat Treasure Chest. I was just going to call it a carrot cabinet until I realized I had 9 carats on it, and it was pretty expensive, so I thought having 9 carats would justify a higher price than 1 carat. Let's see, these are doors that open up, and it's inside is curly maple, and kind of cabinet makerly inside. These are drawers here that pull out of the carrot. Here's a close-up of it's kind of planted down into this piece of walnut. And I think I spent 3 days of mind-numbing punching to get that texture on there. It also has a kind of a thing on the side, so you can slide a slide out to set things on while you're arranging things in there. And when you pull it out, it has a kind of a slice of the carrot that pulls out. Kind of like, I remember that when I was a kid, you get these joke shops and magic shops. And they had a thing you could put a quarter in and put it in and it would disappear. And so it was kind of picked up from that. This is a piece I did, well, actually 2 pieces I did for the Atlanta airport. This one corncord was done just before the Olympics. And then they later let me do another piece for the space. And I wanted to do a functional piece, so I was looking around airports and saying, well, what kind of functional pieces or furniture-like pieces do you see in airports? And I figured it was seating. There's already plenty of seating. And trash cans, already plenty of trash cans, and clocks. Except, I don't know if you noticed this, but you almost never see a clock in an airport. The first one I actually saw was in Las Vegas, and it was a Rolex ad, and Newark has some clocks. But I just put that little, put it on the monitors down in one corner what time it is. So I thought the whole thing runs on time. You know, everybody's there, and time is at the center of all the activity at the airport. Yet there are no clocks, so that was a no-brainer to do a clock. The clock is a butter bean, and it rotates around the carrot about 2 RPM. I don't know if they keep the batteries up in the clock, so I mean, if you miss your plane because you're depending on the accuracy of time on a butter bean, don't come to me. So this piece is about 10 feet long and has a 10-foot shuck span. Over here in the show, there's a mannequin that's wearing a jumpsuit, and when we installed the piece, we printed these jumpsuits with the insignia on it of the corncord, so we look like an official, like flight crew or something, and hard hats, and we made everybody that came out while we were doing the installation wear a hard hat. and then they got to keep them as a souvenir. It's a little bench with handmade fabric by Janet Taylor. The fabric is hand-woven chenille, and then she stripped the color out of it and re-dyed it. It's called dye-vat discharge. This process. And I bought a few yards. She's one of the few fiber artists that I know that weaves yardage, and I bought the yardage at an auction and then designed the pieces around it. It's so rare to find really, upholstery material that I can actually use. You may notice the other pieces were leather, and it's, I don't know, I just wish more fiber artists wove yardage. And this is called burning. The same fabric. This was also designed around that fabric. So one of the challenges for me in doing this work was to try to interject a feeling of spontaneity, kind of like what I really liked about doing free improvised music, to get that sense of spontaneity in a medium that was totally not spontaneous. A lot of these pieces take a month or 2 months or even 6 months to make. And since I'm in business to do it, when I start a piece, I need to be pretty sure that at the end of that time that I'll actually have something that somebody might buy, or else I just have to cash in the chips. So, and it was really difficult to figure out how to do that, because there's just so much planning involved in making a piece of furniture. So, but I found that I could make models and make really kind of quick little models and stick them together with a hot melt glue gun. It was really important to not get invested in the models. One of the first things I did was, I made a model and dovetailed it together, and I got so invested in the model as being the actual finished piece that I didn't feel like I could tear it apart or change it. Since these are really poorly made, I mean, they're almost like improvised and stuck together with hot melt glue. They just have to hold together long enough to photograph them. And then if I don't like the way the leg's working out, I can rip it off and try something else. And I'll photograph them to the same scale. They're like 1/4 or 1/8 size models. And I'll measure up it with an architect's scale and I'll say, okay, this is eye level at that scale, and photograph it. So I don't present the models to clients because, you can hold a model in your hand here. It's like you're 100 feet in the air looking down on it. And this gives you the correct perspective on it. And then I do color studies. So I don't do a lot of detail on the model. I can go in and try different kinds of detail, maybe different holes on the doors, and very quickly kind of work through some of my ideas and see which ones work out. That image, the images that didn't show on that were like a red pepper, an okra pod, all done from the same model. Here's a finished piece of banana pepper cabinet that's 7 feet high, and it has a big cherry inside it. These are the doors right here looking out. And this is a recent piece, a rhubarb table. I grew up eating rhubarb pie, and it just kills me we can't grow rhubarb in Tennessee. We've had no luck growing it. And let's see. Oh, those, I was going to show you a pair of chairs that go with it. They just didn't show. This is my studio in Tennessee. We live on 9 wooded acres. We have a few spots to garden, as you saw in my garden. I just walk you through the studio really quick. it's actually the first place I've ever worked in that was built as a studio. Bench room, and I have space for a gallery there. And then we harvest timber from the land. You know, when trees blow down, we get a guy to come in with a wood miser with a portable sawmill and saw the wood on the spot, stack it up and dry it. And now we're keeping chickens, and my wife is a beekeeper. So we're trying to grow as much of our own food as we can and try to get control of that. And I think that, you know, this was billed as having to do with Agricraft. And I really, the reason I'm showing these, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I see as a really tight relationship with what we're seeing going on in like the slow food movement and in community-supported agriculture and smaller scale agriculture. Is you know, I started making furniture partly because of the craft of doing it and being able to make something that was well made. And I think that the same impulse behind slow food and behind organic agriculture as trying to produce a product that has a high level of integrity and it's done without pesticides and without using antibiotics and in a way that uses materials efficiently and is humane to animals. And I think that you see so many parallels between like cultural tourism. If you look at what has been done like in Western North Carolina with the Handmade in America touring studios around the Penland area. And just last week, my wife was at an agritourism conference in Nashville, and you know, I don't think that those two, that craft and agriculture, have really come together the way they could. But I think there's, you know, very much the same thing happening in both areas. I think the audience is very much the same. You know, people who want to know who made their furniture, who made their pots, who grew their food, where the food comes from, how the animals were treated. So, you know, I just wanted to use this opportunity to bring that parallel up. And maybe, I don't know if some of you are involved in slow food or if you're growing gardens or community-supported agriculture, but I just wanted to throw that out, and I thought maybe we could talk about it a little bit if you have anything to say about it. So I think we're at time for questions, if you have any, or observations. Or, yes?
I'm currently reading a new very familiar with Michael Pollan's On the Word Dilemma. And in it, he went to a Iowa farmer, and in the first part of the book, and he just talked about it. He said Iowa is like 98% corn now, and that the small farms have disappeared. They used to be a diversity of animals and the vegetables, and now it says they're all corn. Oh, have you read that?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Oh, man, it's eye-opener.
Yeah, it really is. I think it certainly got me off my rear end, and so more recently, you know, we can grow our vegetables, and we're getting our own eggs, but we've been really working pretty aggressively to locate. We found a source, a small farm that does grass-fed and grass-finished beef. And we found another couple just like us that's raising meat birds to buy chicken. It's a lot more expensive, but then on the other hand, we're probably eating too much meat anyway. I think that probably having some kind of you know, paying what the food is actually worth puts things in a better perspective about what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat. I mean, since you brought up Michael Pollan, you know, he talks about how in in the Nixon administration, there was a grain shortage in Russia. We sold grain to them. It drove up the price of bread and everything else here, and they completely changed the policy for agriculture to, instead of trying to keep prices up so farmers could make a living, they made it so, with subsidies, so to encourage farmers to grow as much as possible. And then corn became really a raw material industry. And when corn is grown, it's more expensive to grow. Without the subsidies, there's no money at all in corn. It actually sells below what it costs to grow it. And that throws things totally out of kilter. Yeah, and then it's raw material for things like high fructose corn syrup. So really, we can sell a jug of soft drink that big for practically nothing. So, yes.
I'm sorry, I'm late. I don't know if we've covered this, but were you talking? I just at the end of what you were saying of artists coming in, in a community and agriculture in a community, and the overlap of interests and is in Pittsburgh where we have a lot of interesting inputs, but with some with lots of vacant land, and there's this idea of urban agriculture. And I was wondering if you had any examples in your travels or reading of this idea of an artist studio and agriculture coming together and sort of taking over large areas of land and kind of recreating them with something new or.
Yeah, I haven't, but it's a great idea. It's something we've thought about. We've had some studio tours where, we have a group like the Walpole Society, decorative arts curators come in on, or people from the Arts Museum in town have a tour from another community, and they run a gray line bus down to the studio and we show them around. It's sort of like, it's not a corn maze. Well, mine might be a little bit more like a corn maze than most art studios, but but my wife is really interested in the bees and stuff. So that's one thing we're trying to figure out, if there's some way to blend those and maybe create a more, I don't know if I want to say upscale, but a more kind of aesthetically oriented experience that combines agriculture and art. I think with there are a lot of things that happen in urban communities that artists doing projects with abandoned lots and things like that. So it's something that I think is just the time would be right for it.
Your chickens are very decorative. Is there a piece in that or a piece of furniture?
I don't know. We're new with the chickens. These are those aracunas. They lay Easter eggs. The green and blue and pink eggs. So you're nodding. Do you raise chickens?
No, we live in
I
the city.
grew up in a place where we used to raise chickens. But now we have a second house locally, about 45 minutes away, and they have those chickens.
Oh, the Easter eggers. Usually when I say that, people.
And the same chicken can have green eggs or blue eggs. It depends, I guess, on the mood.
Is that poultryography then? Is that next month's thing is going to be poultryography?
Yeah, well, we met a rooster, and he was kind of the star of that show. Yes.
I really liked your radish table. The drawers that open keyword. But I was just wondering if you would ever maybe move to metal in terms of, I was thinking about like bathtubs and like butternut squash that's been scooped out of its seeds and stuff perfectly. Or acorn squashes, kitchen sinks or something, or the larger tables like or cabinets that you had like saunas or something you could walk into.
Hey, I like that. You have a job? I like that. Yeah, I now that you mention it, do you know about the Arts and Industries program at the Kohler runs up near Sheboygan? I went up to look at that because I was interested in doing like enamel cast iron work, because that's really woodworking. At least traditionally, that foundry work would start with a wooden pattern, and I've done a little bit of pattern making, like on that globe, the reliquary piece with the bronze globe. That was cast in most of that was cast in sand from a wooden pattern, and so I've been intrigued by pattern making. And I went up there to check out the facilities and see if I could. Thought I'd be interested in doing one of the residencies. So I went and watched them enameling bathtubs, casting and enameling bathtubs. I could probably do that. It's really an excellent idea. I was thinking on a small scale, but you know, if I went to Kohler, they let me put the stuff into the production lines, and I could actually do. I could do that. So would you like it now?
So especially hearing you talk, but I had the feeling even seeing the corn pieces, there's like a little bit of subversion there. But also you could just take it straight up. So people who grow corn, people who are really involved in this and make their living in it, how do they take these pieces, your cornography?
You know, I don't know. When I started making these pieces, it was really celebrating the agriculture and well, that and just the hyperbole. I mean, I love we go to all the county fairs, and I love the giant vegetable competitions.
Yep.
You know, there's something about that maybe they do that everywhere else, but it just seems really American to me to like grow giant vegetables. I was at a showing at I don't know, in Baltimore or someplace, one of the big craft fairs, and this guy comes along and he's got his cane and takes his cane, and I had a carrot table that had a carrot about that long on it. I grow carrots that size. And I said, oh yeah? He said, yeah, I said, you enter them in the competitions at the fair? And he said, yep, I win almost every one. I win in all categories. I mean, every few years I lay out and let some young people have a chance, but you know, when I enter, I win. I said, what's your secret? I said, coal dirt. Coal dirt. He was from eastern Pennsylvania. Coal dirt. I said, really? He said, that's what I tell him. Coal dirt. I said, you're a great American. You know, I'm glad to meet you. I said, I bet they're about as tender as this one. He said, yeah, they're kind of woody. but it was that kind of thing. I had a garden for a while, and then we moved to a place we didn't have a place to grow a garden for a while. But I kept getting seed catalogs, and I kind of collect seed catalogs. Just every year, you know, I think you fantasize about what you're not getting enough of. You know, it might be sex, or it might be vegetables. And so the longer we went without a garden, the bigger they got in my mind. And when we moved to Tennessee, you know, we kind of had this fantasy of getting a place like Green Acres. You know, kind of wacky existence out in the middle of nowhere, out between Hooterville and Pixley. And we actually found a place that was pretty close to being between Hooterville and Pixley, outside of Nashville. And but I hadn't really intended to get the soil they had at Green Acres, the really bad soil. So the first year I grew a row of sweet potatoes, and then I came in with the entire harvest fit in the palm of my hand, these little pathetic studded sweet potatoes. And I said, Lisa, my wife's name is Linda, but when we're in Green Acres,
Yeah.
You know, and see what the good earth has brought us. You know, it was humiliating. Is the only way I could put it for somebody that makes giant vegetables. It was humiliating. I was ready to go pour concrete over my garden and bring in new soil so it wouldn't mix in with the old crummy soil. I mean, what we have is good for making road bed. But you saw, I managed to at least get a few spots that I can actually grow some decent vegetables on. But for a year or two there, the vegetables were scaling up quite a bit as my little tiny sweet potatoes were coming in. So if we had any questions from the web? What? No questions. Okay. I just remembered we were on the web. So anybody else? Yes.
Three-part question. As, let's say, as an omnivore, as an Iowa native, and as an artist, what are your three favorite vegetables?
Oh man, there's people always ask me this about like what's your favorite color? So are you asking me my three favorite vegetables as structural vegetables
No, just
or as vegetables
what do you like
to
to
eat?
eat? What do you like to eat? First off.
Okay, that narrows it down because, you know.
As an omnivore, just as a human being who wants to eat a vegetable, what do you like to eat?
Just three? Let's see.
No, you're
Artichokes.
number one, artichoke, all
I
right?
like artichokes.
Iowa native. What's your favorite vegetable?
Corn, sweet corn.
Sweet corn. And as an artist?
You know, right now I'm really keen on rainbow chard. I'm spending a lot of time looking at that in the garden.
Good answer.
Boy, those are good questions. I usually can't answer what are your favorite questions, like what's your favorite color, and I think, you know, when I go to paint, work on painting these, a lot of the paint I use is artist oils out of the tube, and I squeeze the color out. If I could eat that, you know, I could just squeeze that into a spoon. The color is so delicious, you know, and I can't imagine saying, oh yeah, I would like red, cadmium red's cadmium yellow. We were just talking about this at IUP, and so I was saying I use artists' alkyd colors, like Winsor Newton makes a color called Griffin. It's an oil, but it actually dries within your lifetime. And so I can also use some similar finishing processes that I do from like wood finishing. So I'll go back and abrade the color and smooth it out when I need to. And so I try to stay away from things like flake white that's lead, and the heavy metal pigments. You know, they're mostly artificial pigments available now. But this guy said, you mean you don't use cadmium? And I love cadmium, and I said, well, I do too, and it's really been hard to give it up. But, you know, I just don't want to breathe cadmium dust. But I just don't relate to like the favorite color. And vegetables, that's hard. What's your favorite vegetable? Leeks? Oh yeah, I forgot about leeks. Add that. Do I have one more?
Asparagus?
Totally. That's my favorite. That's got to be my favorite. And okra, fried, not boiled.
So back to technical. So you're using like artist oils, and then you said that you abrade them, so you get them smooth again, and then you put a furniture finish on it, like.
Now, I use like a glaze, a thin glaze on the surface of the painting medium, alpha painting medium. It's called liquid or galpid. So it's just a really thinned out, smooth out. Yeah, I use an underbody, like Benjamin Moore makes a really nice flat underbody that's an alkyd base, and I can cover the whole surface with that. And I use like the lightest value in the whole piece, and prime it with that, and that I can sand out and get a nice surface to paint on. But then I'll use like that artificial steel wool or something like that
Yeah.
to smooth
Smooth
things
things
out
out
when it's a little
before
too
you
rough.
put a glaze on top.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. I mean, the corn is just gorgeous.
Nice. Okay. Oh,
What, well, the new type of wood are you using for carve?
mostly poplar, tulip poplar. It's very abundant where I live, and I can get it in thick pieces, so I can laminate up the sizes I'm using. And it's not endangered. It's not terribly expensive. It has good structural characteristics, and it carves really well. Okay.
That was great.
Okay.
Thank you.